Really? I think this is the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Yes. So, members meeting.
I don't know.
Jury member. So. Minority. And then they say. Kind of myself, with the transition with the. So. I know. So. Fine. So in very little documents, we had the part of violence we filed. We didn't make change, we did. So we did it as the thing. Yeah. So we could use that closing, from 2 weeks from now. So. Just good.
Did you?
Sorry, I don't know, it's later. Just last night.
Kelly, I just turned it on. Should be out.
Do you mind if I mute you?
Oh, absolutely.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Scripps, Chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission. I call this meeting of the Commission to order on July 16, 2026 at 1:04 p.m. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chair Scripps,
Present?
Commissioner Paratick,
Present.
Commissioner Myers.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Today's meeting is being held in person at the Commission's office at 7109 West Saginaw Highway in Lansing. We are also hosting this meeting remotely using Microsoft Teams. Telephone relay service is available through the phone option. If you are participating via Microsoft Teams, you may also turn on the live captions by clicking on the More button at the top right of your Teams window, then clicking on Language and Speech from the drop-down menu, and finally clicking on Turn on Live Captions. As indicated in the notice for today's meeting, if we lose the remote connection, the Commission will not recess. The meeting will, however, be recorded and available for future reference on the Commission's website. In addition, the Commissioners can receive comments via lara-mpsc-commissioners@michigan.gov, and for reference, this email is also included in today's meeting notice. However, for public comments pertaining to a specific case, please submit your comment to lara-mpsc-edockets@michigan.gov. We will, of course, have an opportunity for the public to make comments as provided in the agenda. A few notes about this. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 per person. If you would like to make verbal comments, you must do so in person or remotely through Microsoft Teams or by calling into the meeting by phone. For individuals attending in person and who want to make a verbal comment, please fill out a comment card. They're available at the table near the back entrance. For individuals participating remotely by Microsoft Teams and who want to make a verbal comment, you may click on the raise hand button at any time to be queued up for comment. For individuals participating remotely by phone and who want to make a verbal comment, you may press *5 at any time to be queued up for comment. Please note that public commenters on both Microsoft Teams and on the phone are added to the same speaker queue and will be called upon in the order that they enter the speaker queue. And so please do not lower your hand or press *5 again, or you'll be removed from the queue and lose your place in line. Finally, please note that the Commission will not tolerate verbal abuse or threats of any kind. If such behavior is observed, the offending party will be asked to leave and escorted out of the building. And to minimize disruptions, attendees participating by Microsoft Teams or by phone will be muted until we reach the time for public comment. The first order of business is approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
I move for the approval of the agenda for today's commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve today's agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The agenda is approved. The next item of business on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 11, 2026 Commission meeting.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the June 11, 2026 commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the minutes from the June 11, 2026 Commission meeting. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The Commission meeting minutes of June 11, 2026 are approved. The next item of business on the agenda is the approval of the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. And today the Commission is assisted by Staff Attorney Caitlin Mucci. I recognize Ms. Mucci. You may be having some technical difficulties. Ms. Mucci, if you are online, we cannot hear you. Fortunately, we have planned for just such an occasion, and so I'd invite Blair Renfro to pinch hit for Ms. Mucci, another fine member of our staff attorney team. I know. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Today's consent agenda consists of 5 communications matters, 2 electric matters, and 1 gas matter. The proposed orders and minute actions for these matters have been thoroughly vetted by the Commission's technical and legal staff and are ready for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Renfro. I move for the approval of the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The orders and minute actions on the consent agenda are approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4A1 is case number U-22045, which involves an application as amended filed by I3 Broadband LLC for a permanent license to provide basic local exchange service throughout the state of Michigan. The order before you grants the permanent license.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22045.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22045 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B1 is case number U-17473, which involves a request filed by Consumers Energy Company for approval of the company's 2026 annual true-up adjustment to the current securitization charges in conformity with the December 6, 2013 order in this docket. The order before you approves the request and accepts Consumer Energy Company's 2026 annual true-up adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Renfro. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-17473.
I second the motion. I second the motion.
You're going to get me singing, Commissioner Myers. Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-17473 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B2 is case number U-20140, which involves the review and approval of extreme weather condition policies filed by the utilities in compliance with the Michigan Admin Code R460.134 of the Commission's Consumer Standards and Billing Practices for electric and natural gas service. The order before you adopts the Commission staff's recommendations as set forth in this order and directs the utilities to file updated extreme weather condition policies.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20140.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This order reflects the Commission's recognition that extreme weather is no longer an occasional challenge. It's becoming a defining feature of our state. Michigan is experiencing more frequent severe storms, more extreme heat, more poor air quality, and more dangerous cold events than in the past. This extreme weather is already affecting customers across the state, and it means that our policies must evolve accordingly. As regulators, we have a responsibility not simply to react to these changes, but to proactively adapt our regulatory framework to the realities of a changing climate. The risks facing customers today are different than they were even a decade ago, and our policies must continue evolving to ensure they provide meaningful protection when customers need it most. That reality makes this order especially important. Electricity and natural gas service are not luxuries during extreme weather. They are essential to health and safety. For many customers, particularly seniors, families with young children, individuals with disabilities, and those with medical conditions, losing service during a heat wave or a period of extreme cold can quickly become life-threatening. And it's not just temperature that threatens public health. Across Michigan today, as many of you have probably noticed, many residents are experiencing hazardous air quality from wildfire smoke, with smoky skies and unhealthy conditions making it dangerous to spend extended time outdoors. During events like these, homes become a place of refuge. Customers rely on electricity to operate air conditioning, filtration systems, and other equipment that allows them to remain safely indoors. Protecting service during these events is important. This order takes meaningful steps to strengthen protections for those customers. By adopting a uniform dual trigger framework tied to clear temperature thresholds and recognized weather advisories, the Commission is providing greater consistency and predictability across all utilities. Customers should not face different levels of protection depending on where they live, and utilities benefit from clear, administratable standards that support compliance and accountability. Importantly, this order also acknowledges that our work is not finished. By directing periodic review of these policies and requiring utilities to update their plans, the Commission is ensuring that these protections remain responsive as weather patterns continue to change. Extreme weather is evolving, and our regulatory approach must evolve with it. Ultimately, this is about recognizing that reliability and customer protection go hand in hand. We ask customers to depend on these systems every day. And during the most dangerous weather events, that dependence becomes even greater. It's our responsibility as regulators to ensure that the protections we have in place reflect that reality. And it is a responsibility of our utilities to implement those protections with care, compassion, and sound judgment.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and order in case number U-20140 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B3 is case number U-21428, which involves an application filed by Indiana Michigan Power Company for reconciliation of its power supply cost recovery costs and revenues for the 12-month period ended December 31st, 2024. The order before you approves the application as modified by this order.
Thank you, Mr. Renfro. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21428.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21428 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B4 is case number U-21845, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company for authority to reconcile its electric investment recovery mechanism for the 13th-month period ended December 31st, 2024. The order before you approves the application and directs DTE Electric Company to turn its net over recovery of $120,000 to its customers through the recording of a regulatory liability to be amortized in future general rate case for the company filed after the conclusion of this case.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21845.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21845 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B5 is case number U-21860, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company for, among other things, authority to increase its retail rates. The order before you denies a petition for rehearing filed by Michigan Environmental Council seeking rehearing on the Commission's February 19, 2026 order issued in this docket for the reasons stated in the order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21860.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21860 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B6 is case numbers U-21907 et al., which involve a matter on the Commission's own motion to open a docket for load-serving entities in Michigan to file their capacity demonstrations as required by MCL 460.6W. The order before you accepts the Commission staff's May 12, 2026 capacity demonstration results report and the 2026 statewide energy storage target calculation, closes the docket in case number U-21907, opens the docket in case number U-22142 for the purpose of receiving capacity demonstrations for the 2030 and 2031 planning year, and annual update using the statewide energy storage target calculation, and directs the Commission staff to convene a work group to address the topics described in this order.
I move for the approval of the order in case numbers U-21907 et al.
I second the motion.
And before we vote, just a few comments on this order. Michigan's capacity demonstration process that's at issue in the order before us was established in 2016 and requires all electric providers, including investor-owned utilities, municipal electric utilities, cooperative electric utilities, and alternative electric suppliers to demonstrate that they have sufficient resources to serve their customers 4 years into the future. Together with the integrated resource planning process also established in the 2016 energy laws, these planning processes help ensure Michigan electric providers are able to maintain resource adequacy for their customers, even as the electric grid continues to evolve. This is particularly important given increasingly efficient reserve margins in MISO and other regional transmission organizations. According to MISO's annual value proposition report, MISO's large geographic footprint allows members to lower planning reserve margins, reducing the required installed capacity. Much of the value MISO creates comes from sharing capacity by setting requirements for a system peak instead of each balancing authority keeping reserves for their region. Savings are generated because MISO members do not need as much capacity for the same level of reliability. As a result, MISO estimates that the efficiencies in reserve margins achieved as a result of resource capacity sharing saved customers across the MISO footprint an estimated $3.4 billion in 2024 and accounted for the majority of the value that MISO provides, a key element in keeping energy costs in check. At the same time, these efficiencies also require closer attention to grid planning and operations, particularly relevant during tight conditions like those we're experiencing this week. But Michigan's belt and suspenders approach to planning, using both the long-term integrated resource planning process and the annual capacity demonstrations reviewed as part of this order, give us important tools to make sure we have a full picture of the ability of utilities and alternative electric suppliers to meet the needs of their customers and to take action when needed. I appreciate the dedication and leadership of our resource adequacy and forecasting section here at the Commission and the cooperation of the load-serving entities and others in making sure we continue to keep a close eye on grid-scale reliability and ensuring our utilities continue to have adequate generation and other resources to serve their customers. Is there any additional discussion on this order? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and the order in case numbers U-21907 et al. Is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B7 is case numbers U-22039 et al., which involve applications filed by DT Electric Company and Consumers Energy Company for approval of revisions to certain commercial and industrial tariffs related to demand response testing requirements. The order before you approves the applications and requires the two utilities to meet with the Commission staff to discuss the development of strategies to mitigate potential negative enrollment impacts caused by impending changes to the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, Inc.'s testing requirements.
I move for the approval of the order in case numbers U-22039 et al.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case numbers U-22039 et al. Is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B8 is case number U-22060, which involves an application filed by DT Electric Company requesting ex parte approval of energy storage system tolling agreements. The order before you approves the application and denies the Michigan Department of Attorney General's notice of intervention and request for a contested proceeding as described in this order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22060.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22060 is approved. Recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B9 is case number U-22110, which involves an application filed by Alpena Power Company requesting ex parte approval for accounting authority to use a regulatory asset to defer operations and maintenance expense associated with the March 2026 storm event in its service territory. The order before you approves the application limited to the company's accounting request as described in the order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22110.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and the order in case number U-22110 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B10 is case number U-22141, which involves an application filed by Alpena Power Company seeking ex parte approval of a power purchase agreement with Alpena Community College. The order before you approves the application.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22141.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This order approves the power purchase agreement between Alpena Power Company and Alpena Community College for the output of the college's new 1.5 megawatt solar array. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Alpena Community College and tour its outstanding utility workforce training programs. I was impressed by the hands-on education they were providing for future line workers and utility forest professionals, careers that are essential to maintaining and strengthening our electric grid. Today, it's exciting to see the college build on that success by expanding into another critical area of our energy future. Thanks in part to a $4.62 million renewable energy and electrification infrastructure grant administered by the Commission, Alpena Community College has created not only a solar facility, but a solar learning laboratory that allows students to gain real-world experience assembling, integrating, and operating utility-scale solar resources. That's exactly the kind of investment that we should be making. It doesn't simply add clean energy to the grid, it develops the skilled workforce that will be responsible for building, operating, and maintaining Michigan's energy infrastructure for decades to come. I also appreciate that this project creates multiple layers of value for Michigan. The college gains a state-of-the-art educational resource. Alpena Power receives locally generated energy through a PURPA contract on approved avoided costs. And students graduate with experience that employers increasingly need as our system continues to evolve. As we navigate a rapidly changing energy landscape, workforce development cannot be an afterthought. Whether we're investing in transmission, distribution, renewable generation, or advanced grid technologies, none of those investments succeed without talented people who know how to build and operate them safely and effectively. This order represents a thoughtful partnership between education and the electric industry, and it demonstrates how targeted public investment can create lasting benefits that extend well beyond a single project. I want to thank Alpena Community College, Alpena Power, and the commission staff in bringing this project forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22141 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4B11 is case number U-22156, which involves a matter on the commission's own motion to investigate the responses of Consumer Energy Company, DT Electric Company, and Indiana Michigan Power Company to the recent Independence Day weekend storm damage in their service territories. The order before you requires each utility to file a report detailing its storm preparedness and response to the storm damage by August 27th, 2026.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22156.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. The severe storms that impacted Michigan over the July 4th holiday left hundreds of thousands of customers without electric service, in many cases for extended periods. I want to recognize the difficult work performed by the utility crews, contractors, first responders, and local emergency personnel who worked under challenging conditions to restore power as safely and quickly as possible. Storms producing widespread outages are no longer rare or extraordinary events. Increasingly, they represent the conditions that our electric system must be prepared for to withstand what may once have been characterized as extreme weather, but now is becoming more typical, a more typical environment to our utilities. As the commission continues its work to promote safe and reliable electric service, it is important that we examine these events carefully. Specifically, this event raises important questions that warrant further examination by the commission regarding utility response, challenges encountered, and customer communication during the storm and outage event. A thorough understanding of these events, begin with a complete record, and conducting this type of review is one of the commission's core responsibilities, ensuring that utilities are appropriately prepared for the conditions they are increasingly likely to face. With that said, I look forward to better understanding what occurred and using that information to help strengthen our state's electric system for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Is there any additional discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the hundreds of thousands of Michiganders whose holiday weekend was instead spent without electricity during dangerous heat and humidity. Losing power is more than an inconvenience. It means families without air conditioning during extreme temperatures, spoiled food, interrupted businesses, and uncertainty about when life can return to normal. For many customers, those outages simply lasted too long. One of the Commission's most important responsibilities is oversight of our state's electric utilities. We approve investments in the electric grid, we establish service quality standards, and we hold utilities accountable for the service they provide. Michigan experiences severe weather. While we cannot prevent storms, we can and should expect our utilities to prepare for them, to respond effectively when they occur, and to communicate clearly and accurately with the customers who depend on them. Reliability and service quality is not measured only by how often the lights stay on, it's also measured by how quickly power is restored when outages inevitably occur, and how well utilities serve customers throughout that process. The volume of complaints received by our staff following these storms raises serious concerns. Customers described prolonged outages, inaccurate restoration estimates, and communication that often failed to provide the information that they needed. Those concerns deserve a thorough review, and that is the purpose of today's order. We're directing Consumers Energy, DTE Electric, and Indiana Michigan Power to provide a comprehensive assessment of their preparedness, their operational response, their communications with customers, and importantly, where their response fell short. We are asking them not only to explain what happened, but also to identify the changes that they will make to improve future performance. This investigation is about accountability, but it is also about continuous improvement. If there are operational practices that need to change, if communications need to improve, or if investments are not producing the level of service customers deserve, we expect those issues to be identified and addressed. Michigan's customers pay for a reliable electric system. They have every right to expect utilities to meet the service quality standards this commission has established. We intend to carefully review the utilities' responses to these storms and expect to see meaningful improvements that reduce outage durations, improve restoration efforts, and provide customers with the level of service they deserve. I look forward to reviewing the reports filed in this docket and continuing the Commission's work to strengthen reliability and accountability for Michigan customers.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick, and just a few words from me as well. I also want to acknowledge the real frustration among the public in the wake of these storms, which followed a week of intense heat and came, as we all know, on the eve of a pure Michigan summer holiday weekend where everyone was looking forward to celebrating Independence Day. It's also clear that the utilities in this instance were caught unprepared for both the severity of the storms and the number of the outages. As my colleagues have mentioned, there was also a lack of communication, including around restoration estimates, and the Commission received 1,500 complaints in the wake of this storm. Commissioner Peretick, you mentioned accountability and improvement, and I think that's incumbent upon us to take the hard lessons from this storm and the utilities' response and use it as an opportunity to do better next time. Michigan utility customers deserve no less. We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22156 is approved. I recognize Mr. Renfro.
Item 4C1 is case number U-22055, which involves an application filed by Consumers Energy Company for ex parte approval to construct and operate the Salem Mainline 2 replacement pipeline, which will replace and reroute the current Salem Mainline 2 natural gas pipeline in Allegan County, Michigan. The order before you approves the application and makes the required agency findings regarding the project's environmental impact.
Thank you, Mr. Renfro. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22055.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22055 is approved. Mr. Renfro, thank you for pinch hitting again this meeting.
My pleasure.
We've now reached the time reserved for members of the public to address the commission. As mentioned in the notice for today's meeting, we will take public comments in the following order. First from individuals attending in person and then from individuals participating remotely, either through Microsoft Teams or the phone who have entered the speaker queue. As a reminder, this public comment period is for commissioners to listen to comments and concerns, not to answer specific questions. When providing comment, please do indicate your name and where you live if you're willing to share so that we have that for our records. And again, please limit comments to one per person and keep them to no longer than 3 minutes. We have a number of cards today. And if folks who have joined the meeting since are interested in providing public comment, you may do so by filling out one of these cards at the table near the back door. But Ron Davis, I have you first, and then Mayor Teresa Rich, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, Roy Davis, St. John's. Last time I was here following the meeting, I was having a conversation with a fellow Michigander out in the hallway, and I was verbally accosted by the CEO of Consumers Energy. The concept of our conversation was what Consumers Energy is really about, and my comment to her was that it's for the shareholders of Consumers Energy. The response from the CEO of Consumers Energy was that I was spreading misinformation. So I looked it up. Consumers Energy, as it was stated earlier today, is an IOU, It's an investor-owned utility. Investor-owned utilities managed by the CEOs have a fiduciary duty to return investment or return revenue on the investment of those investors. Consumers Energy does that through ROEs, return on equity. That's the stuff that they own. Consumers Energy has had a plethora of rate increases approved by this commission. In 2020, 9 million was approved. In 2022, 27.1 was approved. In 2024, 92 million was approved. In 2025, 150 million was approved. In 2026, $276 million was approved by this commission for Consumers Energy. They have a pending request of 456 million, which would put their improved or their rate increases over a 7-year period of over $1.4 billion. Now let's look at Consumers Energy's income. From 2020, 755 million, 21, 1.3 billion, 22, 827 billion, 23, 877 million, 24, 993 million, and in 25, $1 billion. The commission spoke earlier here today about the 1,500 complaints that they received about the response of Consumers Energy and others. That money that we have been giving them or has been taken from us has not gone to increase reliability. I don't understand why the commission continues to give them more rate increases. We have people in this state that are struggling to pay the bills, to pay for gas, to pay for their children to go to school, go to camp. And you have given them almost $1 billion in rate increases. So I don't know if the Consumers Energy, well, I'll tell you why. Who are those people that have that money? Well, the CEO alone has $6 million in stock in Consumers Energy. Who does it benefit for the stock to go up? I implore you for this 2027 application to tell Consumers Energy no. You just mentioned 1,500 people complained. From 2020 to 2025, they've received almost $1 billion in rate increases. Why wasn't the grid secured then? Why was it not secured then? This didn't catch them off guard. I don't think they care because it doesn't represent profit to them. They've had plenty of opportunities to secure the grid. They've had plenty of experiences to go through and train them for this. You remember the Christmas season where their power was out for several days? They had practice then. They don't care, in my opinion. And when the CEO accosts me because I bring up facts, I find that interesting. So I ask you again, my final, as I quoted last time from our Attorney General, Consumers Energy and DTE keep demanding more and more money. The Michigan Public Service Commission continues to reward their incessant demands, their cycle of consistent growing rate hikes and pushing Michigan families and businesses to the brink. My office will intervene in this case, as we always do, but we already know the predictable pattern likely to play out. Consumers Energy loads up its rate hike increase, completely unsupported, inflated cost, and the Michigan Public Service Commission simply splits the difference. Michiganders are facing affordability crisis, and the utility companies are recording record profits. You know. So please, I implore you to deny their next rate increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Apologies for getting your first name wrong.
It's okay.
I'm both the son and married to the granddaughter of a music teacher, which I know is your profession. And so I take it particularly personally that I messed that up. So Mayor Rich, and then Kimberly Bogan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Commissioners, first for your service, as well as the opportunity to speak today. As you identified, I'm Farmington Hills Mayor Teresa Rich. Farmington Hills is one of the largest cities in Michigan, and my residents want you to hear them say, enough is enough. You know, last week I promised I was going to come here and represent their views, and little did I know that yesterday morning at 4 a.m., when the power went out at my house with no storm, temperatures in the 70s, I went in the middle of my sleep when my CPAP cut out. And it made me think about what happens to our residents who are dependent on electricity for their medical equipment. Our community continues to experience unacceptable and dangerous service interruptions tied to prolonged DTE outages, events that strain our emergency response system, put our residents at risk, and cause financial loss. I promise to bring stories. So this includes a 90-year-old Nona who lost a whole freezer full of homemade soups and sauces that I can't even think about how many hours went into preparing that, and had to dump all of it after the 4th of July holiday. The folks who've replaced their utilities or their appliances 4 times in the last 15 years. I already talked about the people who need electricity to power their medical devices. I heard from a number of them who had to go stay in hotels so that they would be able to use their devices. And a lot of them could ill afford those hotel rooms. I heard about a whole square mile subdivision that lost their power for days, had to replace all of their food, and then had the power go out again the very next day. And yes, I have receipts from a number of them. Between the Father's Day outage and the 4th of July outages, the city of Farmington Hills threw out food for over 4,000 meals that were intended for vulnerable adults and seniors in our Meals on Wheels and congregate meal programs. During the most recent outage, our Farmington Hills team responded to 38 wires down, 14 heat-related emergencies, 7 carbon monoxide alarms, including 5 caused by generator exhaust, and 7 downed trees in the right-of-way. Now, when we respond to wires down, our first responders are the ones who go there first and need to remain on site babysitting energized lines until DTE arrives. This takes our firefighters off the street, limits emergency coverage, forces us to rely on mutual aid from other communities, pay overtime, and bring in paid on-call firefighters just to maintain basic service until DTE employees arrive to tend to the downed lines. And the city receives no reimbursement for these response-related expenses. And in this last storm, we had a number of situations where our residents talked to the people from DTE tending the lines who told them, oh, their power is still out because Farmington Hills DPW failed to show up to take down trees that were connected to downed power lines. And that, as we all know, was patently false. This is the reality for local governments. Outages impact all of us, and they trigger cascading operational, financial, and safety impacts. DTE came before our city a couple years ago, and to be honest, things improved for a while. They've slipped since, and this is not okay. So today, I'm asking you to hold DTE accountable for response times, communication failures, and repeated infrastructure breakdowns. And I heard you just ask for the study. I'm not clear on when that study is due, and I know in public comment we don't respond, but
It's August 27th.
Thank you, because we want them to come to our meeting in September and talk to us. I'm asking for a defined process to identify our vulnerable residents and make sure that DTE has a way to provide generators to them, people who are on oxygen and otherwise medically dependent on electricity. You know, the reality is DTE gets rate increases, but we're the ones paying for a lot of it, and we do not. So I thank you for prioritizing the safety and reliability all our communities expect and deserve. And we do thank the workers who came out in extreme heat and worked between the storms. And we know that every worker needs to come home safe at the end of the day, and we appreciate that. But we also appreciate that we need to look at what's happening to our residents as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mayor Rich. Up next, I have Kimberly Bogan and then another mayor, Mayor LaRussa.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kimberly Bogan. I am a registered nurse here in the Greater Lansing area, and I'm also a resident of Holt, Michigan. At the last commission meeting, I spoke a little bit about accountability and asked how the commission evaluates whether the previous rate hike increases have delivered the benefits that were promised to the Michigan ratepayers. Since then, I've continued to try to better understand all of the processes that go on here. And I was encouraged to learn that the commission recently introduced a public tool that gives residents greater access to utility reliability data. So I do appreciate the effort to make that information a little bit more accessible. And I do look forward to spending some more time myself learning how to use it so that I can share it with others as well. One of the things that I do as a nurse is I help to educate people on things that they may not normally understand, like in the medical profession as a nurse. They don't understand most of the lingo and the jargon and what that means. And I try to break that down for people so they can get a better understanding of what's going on. Because as we all know and see here, a lot of this is in a lot of lingo that maybe many people don't understand at all. So as a nurse, whenever we recommend a treatment or an intervention into something, we first ask whether we have the capacity. What are the expected outcomes? How will we measure that success? And how we'll know if it's actually working? If we're asking people to accept more cost or more risk, they deserve to also understand why and what they should expect in return. And I believe that Michigan ratepayers deserve that same transparency here. So we still have yet to see the benefits and the impacts of the several previous rate increases that have been approved. And then we're already reading that the next increase that they've asked for, we expect to have a response by the beginning of, or in the early part of 2027. You just talked about some of the raised questions in relation to the recent power outages over the 4th of the weekend. And it just leads me to question how we are still even considering that we would have a positive response in the beginning of 2027 until we get these raised questions answered. And how can we continue to let them get the rate increases without having anything to show for it? And I will say cynically, my first thought was that they'll give their report and their solution will be that they need more money. So as a member of the public who's trying to understand all of this process, like I said, I deal in medicine and that's what I know. Michigan residents need to find a clear, easy to understand assessment of what our current energy grid capacity is, projected demand from proposed data centers, which with them coming in really leads me back to you guys and the utilities, being able to support any such facilities coming into our state, and how the commission determines whether existing ratepayers are protected from the costs associated with serving those new large energy users. If that information already does exist, I would appreciate knowing where in the public to find it. It is very difficult to find what you're looking for these days. And if it doesn't exist in a way that's actually easily accessible is what I'm asking to the public, I hope that the commission will consider making it available. So my question or my ask from you, as well as what some of these other people have asked, is that we need to really take a look at the issues that we have with asking for more money when we still obviously have a lot of problems that the past increases haven't taken care of. And we have, we're still, I thought about it today. In my lifetime, in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, I've seen our rate increases go up exponentially. And yet we still have, peak demand hours because of, possible strain on the grid. And being asked to conserve energy during these times. So it begs me to ask the question, is the money that we've already spent still being utilized or being utilized well? And should we actually still be considering future increases until we get a better understanding of that? So I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for the opportunity to continue to learn about this process so that I can share with others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Book. Mayor Joe LaRussa and then Don Stevenson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chair Scripps, good to see you again.
You as well.
Commissioner
Thanks for coming.
Peretick and Myers, it's nice to meet you. This is not my first time in front of the commission. I heard a lot of similar things to what I heard in August of 2022 about investigations and getting data. And while I agree that the commission needs to be fully informed about what is happening, I want to just have a little bit of a refresher. I'm the mayor of Farmington, Michigan. We were designated as a frequent outage zone in 2020. And we sent letters to the MPSC in 2022 following the storms that year and their impact on the city. And I have copies with me to share, especially for those that weren't here at that time. But I wanted to restate a couple of the asks that we made at that time and restate them because I feel that given the information that's already been submitted in past rate cases and past investigations, there's ample data to warrant more action from the commission at this moment in time. It is high time for the commission to consider some significant rule changes. 2 in particular seem relevant to our city's issues. Rule 460.517 sets forth the requirement for the utility to bear the cost of construction only where the utility decides to bury electric facilities for its own convenience or where underground construction is required by ordinance in heavily congested business districts. It's time to eliminate this limiting language because it allows utilities to avoid having to look at the obvious solution of undergrounding electric facilities in communities or areas of communities where frequent or long duration outages are occurring. Cities like Farmington cannot typically pay for such things out of pocket, nor can affected residents or businesses. But in some cases, this solution might in fact be the appropriate solution. Rule 460.516 provides only that a customer may request burying of lines. The commission should amend this rule so that it allows burying to be required either by ordinance or where existing overhead distribution and service lines are due for replacement based on maintenance or asset planning requirements or where the existing overhead distribution and service lines are at the end of their useful life. Finally, the city suggests the commission include in its rules an annual outage metric for duration and frequency that limits both metrics for an individual circuit to a certain number not to be exceeded within a calendar year. Rules 460.721 or 460.724 seem likely candidates for inclusion of such requirements. I won't restate what my colleague Mayor Rich has already talked about, devising and implementing programs that protect the most vulnerable among us. I think she made that point very clearly, but it was something we had also asked for in our letter in 2022, and I have copies to leave with everybody and your recording clerk. In Farmington, we're a utility provider too, and our water lines have never been taken out by a tree, and neither is our sewer. And increased tree trimming was a crux of the last thrust for improving the resiliency and reliability of the network in our town. And although we've seen some improvements, my prediction at that time was we would have fewer impacted residents, but those people would be down longer. And this past storm on July 3rd is exactly what happened. We had fewer people out, but they were down longer. And I understand restoration prioritization. I understand all of those things. I've been a registered professional engineer for 22 years. I know how prioritization works on asset management. However, This storm demonstrates that all those previous actions have been insufficient to insulate from severe weather. Even though there's been progress, it's not enough. In DTE's own response to the commission's questions in case U21122, DTE showed and demonstrated that even partial undergrounding showed improvements in Katy, Sadie, and Safety versus overhead plant. It's on page 82. In the same report, in the same response document, DTE estimated maintenance costs for overhead plant ranging from $50,000 to $200,000 per mile over 10 years. In the same chart, underground facility maintenance over a 10-year period is $750. That's 67 times less. For DTE's overhead plant of 31,000 overhead miles, this 10-year maintenance cost would balloon to $3.875 billion. If those 31,000 miles were undergrounded, that same maintenance cost would be $23.25 million, saving DTE $3.85 billion over 10 years. I may have found a business case. I would urge the commission to change the administrative rules, require any future funding to include set-asides for programs that will help the most vulnerable among us, and suspend all further rate increases until we see improvements in the duration of all these outages that are affecting our communities. The penalties that are currently in place, cumulatively, I've amassed about $50,000 of loss, and that doesn't include the unpaid labor hours, as Mayor Rich alluded to prepare food for storage and do all of these things. None of those residents are going to see a dollar unless it's voluntarily given by DTE, because the current mandatory penalties don't kick in until the 96th hour of outage under the current outage breadth of 300,000 customers. They will not see a single dollar unless DTE voluntarily gives it to them. We were down for 79 hours, and that means we won't get any of the required fees. I urge the commission to revamp that penalty structure to improve and strengthen the business case, to drive investments in permanent solutions, and to make these penalties more than a cost of doing business. They've got to be painful enough to drive decision-making for a business case to make permanent change and permanent investment in resiliency and robustness of the grid that serves our city. Thank you for what you do. I want to thank the workforce that's out there. The utility workforce is under an extreme amount of demand. They are working hard. They're coming from all points everywhere to help us out, and we appreciate it. It's time for us to use our authority and our political will to drive the policy changes necessary to drive the business decisions that will end up changing things for the better for our residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor LaGrusa. Don Stevenson. Okay. And then Helena Thornton.
Good afternoon. My name is Helena Thornton. I'm a citizen of Wayne County. I'm an industrial engineer, hence my passion to find cost justifications. My topic is the Cannoli Data Center water closed loop cooling, please. We need to figure this out. So I've given you guys some information. They're proposing two to three, even more gallons per day of cooling, which would be evaporative city water. I tried to justify that on the only dollars I had was residential rate. Of course, it's inconsequential, less than $100,000 per year for them, perhaps. But of course, that would go in the utility pockets. So the risk of data center lack of revenue is possibly the answer. Water main breaks. So I requested the data for the water main breaks. It was available for the first 10 years of the century. 2005 to 15, roughly. And they called that local and regional. I asked for the rest of it to bring us up to date. They gave me half. They gave me one of it. I don't know if it was local or regional because it didn't specify, but they did let me know that was only part of it. And some a pie in the sky picture would be great, right? What's the rest of that data? With your influence, you could probably obtain it more readily than myself. And then I have this vision, of course, of having the geographic location of each mapped and the duration of the downtime, how many hours did it take to fix, and the root cause, of course. The power failure itself can cause a water main break from the cascade of events, the pressure changes. The fact is, there have been instances where over 2 weeks to repair water lines, and there's one data point at least west of 275. So the whole point is, please tell Cannoli that they're talking about a system that was developed starting 147 years ago. Now, maybe in Van Buren Township, it's not that old, but you got to understand there's a over a foot in diameter direct trunk line from DTE to GW LA. And if you guys don't know why I'm standing here talking to you about water, please understand that the last step in that process is ozonation. Our water is ozonated. Now, we're not only sending it 35 miles to cool and be evaporative and perhaps affect the climate issues that you were talking about improving your policies for. It's ozonated, okay? So what a wasteful thing, right? Yeah, closed loop is probably the way to go. So what I've provided for you is there's people in the state already talking about collaboratively, and wouldn't it be nice if while you're bringing I-94 as an example is ripped up between like Telegraph and 275. Wow, what an opportunity to put a water main underground, electricity underground. That sounds like an optimal thing to collaborate on. But these people are already working in Michigan. So planningmichigan.org. This is, anyway, I've listed them out, and sorry, you can look them up. I thought it would be a real win for you guys and for the governor to bring these people together, clear your desks, bring these people. We're talking about groups that include the Eagle director, Phil Roos, the universities, all of the public works groups, public works departments from across the counties. These people are putting their heads together already, and GW LA also, and the utilities are all involved in these groups and these conversations, and they're already working on this. So it seems like it would be a real good win for you guys to talk to them before you agree to letting Cannoli use our city water, when by the estimates are, 70,000 residents roughly can't even afford it. So the revenue is anywhere between $20 to $80 million a day. It's going to depend on their business model. And I do include on this paper that I've handed you I do have a quote, it's a verbal quote from that ever.com. Roughly, they're saying a 7-year payback to do the closed loop cooling for $50 million. They're saying totally, it's just a guess, right? I'm writing down what they verbally told me is a guess. But you need to understand that when they're making $20 to $80 million a day, and people like Mark Zuckerberg have said, it's not really a big deal for them to spend $200 to $300 million just vetting a site. Okay, so I think that pulled it all together for you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I don't have any additional cards for folks participating in person. We do have a number of people queued up through the virtual options, and so we'll start there. Thank you for your patience, but I have Victoria Camille first, and then William Davis. Victoria Camille, I can see your hand. If you can unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Greetings, commissioners. My name is Victoria Camille, and I'm a resident and elected police commissioner of Detroit District 7. One of you said today that Michiganders pay for a reliable energy system. I would argue that what we pay should be able to provide 2 or 3 reliable energy systems. Energy costs are entirely too high and the service is unreliable. In this latest power outage, people were without power for 4 to 5 days, and still some are without power, and it's been over a week. This causes loss of food, the inability to keep cool, and puts seniors, children, and persons with medical conditions at risk. Our neighborhoods were dark and the traffic lights weren't working, which posed major public safety issues. In my very own neighborhood, and thanks to the generosity of neighbors, we scrambled each day to find dry ice to reduce loss of food. We shared food and leaned on those who had access to power sources to charge devices to try to maintain some level of normalcy. What DTE has offered to compensate for loss of food is grossly insufficient. DTE needs to spend their time and money taking care of their customers instead of lining the pockets of politicians that are willing to be bought off by big corporations. Safety starts with ensuring that people have their basic needs met. That includes reliable energy to sustain street lighting, people's homes, food, and health needs. DTE does not deserve rate increases. Force DTE to lower their rates and provide reliable service. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Commissioner Camille. Up next, we have William Davis and then Alfredo D'Annunzio. Mr. Davis, if you can unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is William M. Davis, former elected police commissioner for District 7 in the city of Detroit. I'm a City of Detroit retiree. I'm a president of a group of City of Detroit retirees. You know, there are 11,000 general fund City of Detroit retirees in the city, in Metro Detroit. I am dismayed at Detroit, at DTE. I'm older than all of y'all, so back in the 1980s, I was a shareholder in an investment group that had Detroit Edison investment. At that time, Detroit Edison was telling us that they needed to put everything underground, especially in the city of Detroit. Most recently, my power did not go out, but my sister, who is also over 60, her power has gone out 3 times in the last 30 days. This is really unacceptable. We need to make sure the system is more reliable. It has not been. And it needs to be penalties for when you have prolonged unable to use your electricity. It should be like, say, once you cross the 4-hour threshold, DTE should be compensating people. We have people, I'm in decent health to be a senior, but my sister used a respirator. My sister used oxygen. We have a lot of seniors, especially in the city of Detroit, who continuously have their power going out, but yet there's no special compensation. There's nothing special being done. Because we keep losing food, we keep losing power, we keep making our city more unsafe. We need to make sure DTE and Consuming Powers pay for outages. Communities that have to, put the bill for them not doing what they could do because they're trying to enrich their shareholders instead of doing what they should be doing when they have a monopoly. This is unacceptable. So hopefully y'all will encourage some changes, especially in so much that compensation should start at the 4 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, former Commissioner Davis. Up next, we have Alfredo D'Annunzio and then Justin Fenwick.
Did it work? Hey, my name is Caitlin Hurley. Alfredo D'Annunzio is my husband. I'm just using his account for Teams.
Got it.
I'm a 30-year-old homeowner in Detroit. I'm one of the 6% of Gen Z that own homes, and DTE is effectively making me house poor. Their increased rates over the years have caused my DTE bill to go from just a little rough around $300 a month to close to $700 every single month. It's making me reconsider if I can even afford to stay in Michigan and start a family in Michigan. It's absolutely ridiculous that DTE makes $1.5 billion in profit a year tax-free, while everyday Michiganders are not getting a raise or a bump in their budget from the year before. I implore you to please stop allowing rate increases from DTE. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Justin Fenwick, and then we have a person by phone. The last four are 2987.
All right, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
All right. Yeah, my name's Justin Fenwick. I live in Detroit. I'm here because in just the past month, I experienced two major outages. Once over the 4th of July weekend, my home was out without power for 5 days. I was out of town, a lot of things to coordinate with that. And I received so many inaccurate estimates about the restoration. And then again, the neighborhood lost power last night. And as of this morning, my pharmacy in the city's only 24-hour CVS was still without electricity. So I couldn't pick up the 6 prescriptions that my household has. And I'm sure there's plenty of my neighbors who have more important things that they need to be taking medication-wise than me. Storms happen, but repeated, prolonged outages are becoming something that Michigan customers come to expect rather than tolerate. I bought a generator a long time ago because I was counting on an unreliable grid and that it would pay for itself in prevented lost food. No one should have to rely on a generator. Most of my neighbors can't afford to. As regulators, you have the responsibility to ensure that utilities provide reliable service. We can have a grid that is less susceptible to outages and prepared for the changing weather patterns, not just better response and restoration times. Reliability must come before higher bills. I asked the Commission to require significant improvements in reliability before approving additional rate increases. Those improvements should be demonstrated with clear public metrics that customers can understand, fewer outages, shorter outages, and evidence that investments are making the grid more resilient. Michigan residents are paying more, while too many continue to wonder whether the lights will stay on when a storm comes through. We deserve a system that is dependable, accountable, and worthy of the rates we already pay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fenwick. Up next, we have a phone caller with the last four, 2987, and then Chris Hutton. We're having a hard time hearing you if you're the caller. Okay, we'll try and come back to you. We have Chris Hutton and then Cass Valentine. Apologies. Chris Hutton, if you can unmute yourself,
Hi.
we'd love to hear from you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to start by just saying that I moved to Michigan in 2020, and other places are just not like this. I grew up in Iowa, and we would maybe lose power for like a night maximum. I've never lived somewhere where it's going like 4 or 5 days. It's just like, it's crazy to me that this is like a thing that people accept. There wasn't even a storm last night and I still lost power. I'm worried about like my cats even, you know, it's like so hot and the air quality is all messed up right now. So I can't run things like fans. I really agree with like a lot of things that people have already said. The amount of compensation they were offering was pathetic. We really need to suspend rate increases, increase penalties on them. We really need like any reports as it like pertains to DTE and like improvements or issues to be made like available and understandable for everyone. Plans for improvements, all of that kind of stuff. And I just would ask you all to do everything that you possibly can to improve the situation for all of us. Because we really like, it's a lot harder for us to deal with this than it is for them to coast. I also just want to add that like everyone knows that DTE is bad. It's a common joke around here, but we can actually like imagine better. Like I'm kind of speaking to my like fellow Michiganders here. Like Wyandotte has public energy instead of a for-profit company running this stuff. And like that's the kind of thing that we all should be thinking about and pushing for the rest of us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton. I'll try again with the person who's last for our 2987. Okay, we'll move on to Kes Ballantine. And then somebody with the last two numbers of 58. Kes Ballantine, if you can unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. What is mildly comical is that when I was waiting for my turn just now, my power went out again, which means that I am using my phone hotspot to both do my job and also participate in this meeting. My name's Kes Ballantine. I'm a 40-year-old resident of the Bagley neighborhood of Detroit's West Side. I've lived here for 5 years. My power in the third event was out for 5 days, and also the power outage caused a fire in my neighborhood and my neighbor's garage across my alley, which was very frightening. I have paid electric bills in 3 states with 4 different electric utility companies in my adult life. I can count on one hand the number of times in my entire life prior to living in Michigan that my power was out in North Carolina and Pennsylvania combined. This does not happen in other jurisdictions. Since moving to Michigan, I have only one option for purchasing my electricity, DTE. They are by far the worst company I have ever purchased electricity from, and yet the most expensive. I regularly lose power. This year had been better, as they say on every commercial I have heard from them. But that record was smashed by a 10-minute storm, after which I and many of the people on this call lost 5 days of power, hundreds of dollars of food, including frozen meat and homegrown vegetables and frozen meals, all of which are more expensive than ever to replace. I had also had to delay work that I needed done on my home due to the power outage. I lost many hours of my own valuable time cleaning out my fridge, freezer, and deep freezer. The power outage also broke one of our hardwired overhead lights that must now be replaced and will require us to get an electrician. I'll also note that just about everyone in my social network also had no power, so there was basically nowhere for us to go. Luckily, I had time off, so I did not have to also figure out, as many of my neighbors did, how I was going to do my job as a social worker and researcher with no power. I will also note that I could physically see the downed line in the alley behind my house. So when DTE kept texting me that my power would be back on soon, I could see with my own eyes that that was not true. I'm not an electrician, but 2 down lines behind my house means no power for me and my block. In the end, my block was the last in our neighborhood to get our power back on, 3 days later than we were told by DTE after 2 additional extensions. Earlier today, I was called by a computer voice read message that let me know that I will have a planned power outage today. They said they would give advanced warning. The day of is not advanced warning, and they provided no specificity as to when this will occur. Apparently, it was about 3 minutes ago. I am working from home. I need to know when my workday might be disrupted. The level of communication is impersonal, too little, too late, and too inaccurate given how much money we are paying. As you noted earlier in this meeting, extreme weather will continue. I also cannot imagine how this will be with the combined impact of extreme weather and expanded strain of data centers on our grid. Given this and the consistent failure of DTE to maintain consistent power even under typical times, I make 3 proposals. First, we need much more money than the piddly compensation that we will be provided. I want the full cost of what they caused for me and my neighbors, or at least what I would have paid for my electricity for those few days to be refunded. Second, I propose that the commission recommend subsidies or tax credits by the state and or DTE itself for purchasing generators. If we cannot rely on their system, we need backups for our communities. Finally, I propose that the commission recommend that the legislature or other government entities enable community members to use paid sick leave allowed by the recently passed state law in the event of power outages that stop people from being able to work or results in illness, lack of sleep, or lack of access to medications that may put people at risk for going to work or driving a car. If our utilities cannot ensure people's health and safety, then the government needs to figure out some way to at least enable people who work hourly, who have to work under these conditions, who work remotely. When there is no power, people should have some type of opportunity to keep themselves safe and healthy and not receive additional punishment of, for example, not being able to do remote work. I thank you for your time, and I hope to continue to see changes and improvements.
Thank you, Ms. Ballantyne. We'll try one more time for the last four of 2987. Okay, the next person is, the last two digits are 58, and after that we have Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. The person calling in with the last two digits of 58 can unmute themselves. Okay, we may have to come back to you as well. Congresswoman Tlaib.
Did it work? Oh, good.
It did work.
Thank you so
It's good
much.
to hear
Yes,
you.
thank you so much. Hey, Scripps. So as you probably have seen, there's a tremendous amount of frustration, I think, throughout my congressional district. So I just, I want folks to know, and I know you all know your job and your responsibility, but it's written right there that you all decide utility rate increases through looking at like factors like, the grid infrastructure investments, storm restoration expenses, operations, a fair and authorized profit on the capital investment. So you got to look at all those factors. And the word reasonable, to serve customers are reasonable, like the utility costs to serve customers are reasonable and prudent. Why reasonable is important here is because I don't know how anybody could describe what's happening to my residents as reasonable. It isn't just that they give swag bags, you guys, with literally portable chargers that do not work. They're not charged. They give it to them and it's not charged. Where are they supposed to charge it if their homes doesn't have any electricity? It's an insult. They give them 4 water bottles and portable chargers that are not pre-charged. Portable, like these, I don't know what they call them. I think Ms. Myers knows what I'm talking about. But it's important that you all understand it's not reasonable that many of us had to stand in one of our senior centers in Dearborn that borders right there in my Detroit community there. All that whole community was out, that an hour before we showed up, they had fixed it finally. But why did we have to call a press conference for them to actually go out there and address it? And I understand storms happen, but I think there's a sense of responsibility to make sure that their response and preparation is adequate, especially with many vulnerable communities that were impacted. I think it's important to know that many of my residents say that all the utility trucks that come into our state are not Michigan license plates. That means they're relying heavily on private contracts outside of Michigan. Like, are you all, I want you all to ask, like, how much are in state? How much are out state? And I say this because what if something happens in the Midwest and we got to pull from the same resources as Minnesota and others? I think it's important to understand that sometimes the map is wrong. I have residents that have called me. Actually, one of my council members just was meeting with me just now. And I was telling him, you know, the maps are not adequate. He goes, yeah, you're right, because the brownouts, when there's a brownout. So for instance, alone in my own house, you know, I have a dog, I have people there. I had to move my children to a relative's home. And I just remember, you know, of course, my block club Campton is calling me. Everybody's calling me because they know I live on the block. And you should know, it said, oh, your lights are back on. No, they weren't. It was just my child's room. My son Yusuf's room was on, but the AC, everything else wasn't working. It was, I think they call it a brownout. So I think it's important that map is adequate, that if they do have different shades, then make sure. But to continue to tell my residents, no, you should have power, and you don't. I even had someone walk up to some of the either contractors or workers, and I know they're working their butts off, and we appreciate that. But we know they're being put in a situation that I don't think is reasonable, and I don't think they're best prepared. So I think it's important to understand the map needs to be accurate and not to be telling my residents that their power is on when it's not fully on. Also really important, the reimbursement. I am so happy it's automatic, because it killed me to have my residents have to apply for it. Some of them don't know how to do it and everything. Now it's automatic. And you guys have heard it. But I think we need to understand, especially when it was so close to each other. You had the July 4th weekend, and then now, you know, in these recent days, that $42 is not enough for our residents. And so I think it's really important. Also, the tremendous amount of calls that we got, like I had a Livonia resident call me. She was on her 3rd or 4th day, I believe, and she does oxygen at night. She takes oxygen. She has a hard time breathing. And she called and she said, you know, what can I do? You know, and the response from customer service was, go to the hospital. I heard that from a number of people. DTE saying, well, just go to the hospital. I think there's a level of like, okay, if somebody, a vulnerable neighbor is calling, they're saying, of course she would. She goes, Rashida, of course I would go to the hospital if it was, you know, urgent. But at that time, I was just trying to get a better sense. Do I need to go now? Do I, you know, are we talking about 2 more other days? There again, it's not reasonable information that's coming out. They tell you, I promise you guys, and I know you've heard it. They say it's going to be done by midnight, and it won't be. That is probably 99% of the time. That's not fair to somebody with health conditions. If you're telling them that they're going to be getting electricity by this certain time and it doesn't happen, y'all, like, I just think that puts lives in jeopardy. That's why children died. I really think that's why a lot of folks are, when we don't give the information out to our residents. Lastly, you know, this is me as a resident speaking, and I have to be very careful because I'm not allowed to tell you vote yes or no. But please look at these standards around reasonable and prudent. We need to consider rate increases. This is your duty and responsibility. You can't keep allowing them to blame the weather and everything. The fact of the matter is, in my neighborhood, which is a hugely dense neighborhood, it's 48223, 48219, 48227, 48228 zip codes. I'm telling you, and if you look at that, it's underground wiring, Scripps. I kept asking them, what is that? They kept saying it's underground wiring. Ask them about that. Why is it? I think it's because the grid is overloaded. But why aren't they prepared in investing that rate increase they just got into separating grid? And I'll leave you with this. They did this in Livonia. They moved one of the senior buildings. I heard it from the mayor herself. I said, you know, I'm so glad the senior building doesn't go out as much. She goes, yeah, well, they push and push, and they put that senior building in a different grid. Again, I'm not an electrician, I'm not an engineer, but there has to be some conversation about these underground wires and knowing these lines are not upgraded enough to handle the amount of power being used. And I'm sorry, but asking my residents to use less, to do all of that while they continue to increase and do no upgrades is not fair to them. You know, telling them, hey, we're going to do a, what is it called, from this time to this time is going to be a upcharge, is not fair to them. To tell them you got to do this or that, and at the same time for them not to invest in these grids. Again, look at those zip codes and ask specifically, because there was no storm. What happened, y'all, is the underground wiring failed, and we got to ask why. So I really appreciate this. I might be missing my flight to get back home. But I just wanted you all to hear from me. And you know, Scripps, you served with me. You know, my residents have my cell phone. They send me pictures. They send me constant updates. Rashida, they lied. Rashida, look at this. I didn't know about the swag bags until somebody told me. I can't tell you the horrible stories I've been getting, Scripps, and you know that these are people's lives and the human impact is real. And all they got is you all. Between them and DTE and consumer, it's you all. So please, I know you take it very seriously, but please know that we have to serve the customers. And customers are residents and families. It has to be reasonable. The cost increases have to be reasonable and prudent. And I think these last 2 weeks have shown us that we need to do more oversight. It's not just investigation, knowing what went wrong, but really understanding specifics and looking at actual cases where, like 48223 and these other areas with no storm, what happened? Because I think that will help us hold them accountable even more. So I really appreciate this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We have a couple more folks still in the queue. We'll try and get through the folks that we still have. We have obviously run over, but we also wanted to make sure that we heard from as many people as we could. And obviously we've been a little lax with enforcing the 3-minute because we wanted to hear these stories. It's what this public comment period is for. Up next, we have Jerome Goldberg and then Brian Lissy. Jerome Goldberg, if you can unmute, we'd love to hear from you. All right, we'll go to Brian Lissy.
Hello?
Yes, I think we can hear you.
Hey, great. Hey, my name is Brian Lisi, and I'm a resident of Detroit. I'm speaking today to call out on the Michigan Public Service Commission to reject any further rate hikes for DTE. It's utterly ridiculous that DTE has paid no federal income taxes for the 12th straight year, despite making more than $1.5 billion profit. That money isn't going towards improving infrastructure, it's going into the pockets of DTE. I've been experiencing brownouts for the last 2 weeks, and I lost power for 4 days over the July 4th weekend. I had to throw out hundreds of dollars in food and medication, all because the grid that DTE manages couldn't handle a 10-minute windstorm. After listening to my fellow Detroiters today who have experienced worse, it's sad to say that I should consider myself lucky. The Michigan Public Service Commission needs to step up and protect Michiganders, not DTE's stakeholders. Fuck DTE, and thank you for your time.
Oops. Sorry, I don't think my phone was on. We'll try Jerome Goldberg again. And then Denzel McCampbell.
Can you hear me now? This is
Yes.
Jerome Goldberg.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Jerome Goldberg. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Detroit who suffered many outages, including one just this last weekend. I appreciated the resolutions that were passed earlier in the meeting where the MPSC seems to have come to realize how serious the outage problem is in Michigan. And it certainly didn't just begin on July 4th weekend. But passing empty resolutions isn't what's needed. The stick that the MPSC has to command DT to provide service to its customers is the rate hike request. And I would demand and ask that the MPSC begin by summarily denying the $474 million rate hike request that DTE has had audacity to request after having just won approval for a $242 million rate hike a few months ago. The hearings that are necessary on how to give this criminal utility more funds, but how to command that it provides service to the people And those are the hearings that need to continue, the investigation that needs to be gone. And that's what really should be on the agenda of the right now. The fact is, the utility performance report by the Citizens Utility Board stated that Michigan utilities ranked 51st out of the 50 states in the District of Columbia in their performance on the customer average duration index. They ranked 50th on the system average duration index, a measure of total outage duration for each customer served, with only main utilities performing worse on that metric. And they ranked 14th highest in residential rates and have the highest residential rates of any state in the Midwest. DTE reported operating profits of $1.5 million in 2025 and earnings of $1.4 billion in 2024. Their executives rake in the funds, with the director, the executive chairman, raking in $12,668,000 last year. It's time for the MPSC to shed its reputation as a rubber stamp for the utilities, summarily deny DTE's $474 million rate hike, and begin investigating and begin hearings in a serious way on what's needed and how to ensure that utilities provide the service that the residents of Detroit and Michigan are entitled to, and if not, to talk about how to turn to public utilities where the right to electricity and heat should be guaranteed as a human right, not be based on profit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. We're going to try the two phone numbers that we tried earlier again, and then we'll keep moving on. So if your phone number ends in 2987, it looks like you're still here. We'd love to hear from you. You may have to press *6 to unmute yourself. It's the only thing I can think of. Okay, I'll try with the phone number that ends in 58.
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Oh, am I coming through?
Yes, is this 2987 or 5? Okay,
Yeah.
Never mind. I can see.
2987, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
glad
you,
it finally
sir.
went through. Hi, this is, my name is Keith Butkovich. I live in the city of Wayne, and I am absolutely disgusted by everything that's going on. I've lost two sustained outages in the past few months. One was the day before Memorial Day, where apparently a 10-mile-an-hour wind knocks a tree in a line that was in DTE's easement within their 15 feet with the lines. So obviously they're not trimming trees like they claim. The next outage, as you all know, was the 3rd of July, which ended up lasting for me 93 hours and 20 minutes, which conveniently is less than the 96 hours required to give me anything. So I filed the complaints. DTE doesn't care. They gave me, actually the guy outright lied to me about crews being in the area one day, and they weren't, because I drove around, I know my neighborhood. The estimated time was wrong. It ended up being another day. Filed a complaint at the MPSC. They were of no help. They just took what DTE said as word. They didn't do any investigations. I was very disappointed in that. My state rep doesn't care. The state senator doesn't care. Whitmer doesn't care. And now I'm not sure if this board is really going to do anything, because all I see is just have them file a report. There's no actual investigations, nothing like that. I continue to have, and I know there's going to be another power outage. It's just going to happen. The DTE is unreliable, and I just see no action from this board that we are paying for with our tax dollars or from the MPSC in general. They're not doing anything. They're just rubber stamping, and your board is rubber stamping this. As I understand, there's about 200 employees with the MPSC. That's what I was told by one of the supervisors. And I just wonder what is going on. What are we spending our tax dollars on? You do not allow any kind of competition whatsoever. So another company cannot come in and even think about putting up lines or burying lines, because DTE, at least in my part of the state, has a monopoly. So it's either that or put up your own generator or windmill or whatever. And I've lived in this state my entire life, over 40 years. This outage over the past Independence Day weekend was the longest that I've ever experienced. And I see nothing being done about it. In fact, I'm at the point where, as I said, I've lived here my entire life. I am seriously considering moving out of the state, partly because of an unreliable power grid and a board and a government organization that doesn't care. The stereotypes about Lansing government being ineffective and incompetent are true, and it's disgusting. So I'm asking for an actual investigation into this, actual credits, not $0 because it was less than 96 hours. And if that's not going to happen, I ask for this entire board to resign themselves immediately. And I ask for this commission, which obviously doesn't do anything, and the MPSC to just dissolve itself and give the money we spend on our taxes back to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Try one more with the last two of 5-8. And then Denzel McCampbell. Hey, Denzel McCampbell, if you're still there, I'd love to hear from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Denzel McCampbell. I serve as a Detroit City Council person for District 7. You've actually heard from quite a few of the residents that live in the district that I serve. And I know you have all received over 1,200 complaints around mostly the storm that has been talked about. But I'm sure you're going to receive even more around the outage that we just had just recently. I even got a call from residents in the entire neighborhood that their power was out, and it went out at 11 p.m. last night in the midst of a heat wave, in the midst of wildfire and such. And I just want to take a moment to say what that means when we're talking about folks needing AC to not impact respiratory health, when folks are needing filters and air filtration to not impact their health, and yet to be faced with a power outage. That's absolutely outrageous and absurd. When we think about the rate increases that have been talked about, and time again, you've heard this all today, of folks constantly getting rate increases to say that it's for reliability, to say that will make sure that your lights do not go out, your energy does not go out. And then to be faced with outages still yet again and again is absolutely unacceptable. The folks have talked about the credit that they get. I had a call from multiple residents, one senior who was on my phone on the verge of tears because she and her husband had just bought groceries and they're on a fixed income and they had to throw all of that away during that time. And that is something that we should all be angry about. As we see costs go up, and yet an investor-owned monopoly utility is showing that they do not care about our residents. And I do want to make clear that I'm not talking about the line workers and the folks who go to work at DTE day in and day out. I'm talking about the folks who make the decisions to not invest in our grid, to not invest in our people, but to line the pockets of investors and also other elected officials to do their bidding. What I would say is that I would hope that this commission and also the legislators that have the power to do so actually give you all and advocate for the power for you all to consider the complaints that you get in when it comes to rate increases, when it comes to what folks are facing. Because I did read a Detroit Free Press article that said that you all won't take into those accounts, those complaints. And I think that should be changed. At the end of the day, as you heard from the last caller, and I know you all know this, and I know you all have you take your job very seriously. And I see this every day at Detroit City Council. Folks have deep concerns about our government, our elected officials, our officials in government working on their behalf. And we have the duty to show them that we are listening to them, that we are taking action on their behalf, and we are protecting them. As Mayor Rich shared, the folks that are on medical devices, the folks that depend on electricity to live, the folks that depend on electricity to have a quality of life, we owe it to them to ensure that the utilities are doing all that they can do to make sure that we have the energy that we all need. So again, I appreciate you all the work that you are doing. I hope that we continue, and I hope what you heard today move you to really hold these utilities accountable and ensure that our government is protecting our people across the state. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember McCampbell. Up next, we have Bobby Johnson and then Cheryl Douglas.
Greetings. My name is Bobby Johnson, and I live in District 7 and in District 12. Yesterday, we did have another power outage. Before we had that power outage, we had one over the holidays, which is the 3rd. That's when most seniors get paid. Those seniors went out, they bought their food, they got their medicine, thinking they're going to have a good holiday. The power goes out, they lose their food. Some of them don't get DSH, where you can get food replacement. So that was their whole entitlement for the whole month. Now they have no food. There's no penalties for DTE. They give out no compensation. They don't care. Our area, they went to the areas that are more powerful or have more influential. They didn't come to our area to give us swag bags, 4 bottles of water. They didn't give us nothing, no generators, no lights, no nothing. All we got is your power will be back on. When our power comes back on, our food is gone. Our food is wasted. Some of us as single mothers had just got thinking a blessing with us getting the summer EBT card, and we go fill up our refrigerators. Now the summer EBT card that we filled up our refrigerators are gone, and there's no replacement for it. But DTE is constantly getting a raise, constantly able to do whatever. I'm looking at whoever I vote for governor, the people that they appoint to this commission must be someone that cares about the community, because all these rate hikes, all this non-accountability, all this allowing them to do, they don't even give reimbursement to low-income families. They don't give reimbursement to seniors. You have to be out for a certain amount of time. That doesn't save your food. But people can sit up there and write, look smug, look on their computers, be like, oh, but this affects people. And when it affects people, you should care. And if you don't care, then why are you there? Because the job is for you to care about the people, about the residents. We are getting screwed every which way. The power, you pay $300 to $400, let you go 3 or 4 days without paying your bill and you have a shut off notice, you're cut off. But they can make you lose your food. So now I have people that have never had to stand in a food pantry line, now standing in food pantry line, getting old food, getting food that is a hand-me-down. When you have worked and retired and expect to have a better life and you're living like we're in a third world country, and people are allowing corporations to make billions of dollars off the back of working families and seniors. This is ridiculous. What I ask you is to penalize them, not after 96 hours. Your food doesn't last 96 hours. After 4 hours, we have given them enough money. It is time to give back to the community. And if you have a heart, if you have a conscience, then you will sit up there and you will vote to not give them a raise, and you will vote to penalize them. Thank you. My name is Bobby Johnson from Franklin Park, and we need help over here. My residents are crying.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Up next is Cheryl Douglas. We probably have time for about 3 more people. So we've got a couple more than that on the list. We'll see who is still here, but Cheryl Douglas, you're up next.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, because I had problems. I agree with previous people that were speaking as far as power outages. I live in Dearborn for 32 years, 33 maybe. And when I first moved here, we had issues with DTE as far as power going down just for no reason at all. And we had a town hall meeting, and the Michigan Public Commissions came out. I don't know if you guys were on the board, this maybe about 20 years ago. And things seemed to straighten out. And until this 4th of July weekend, I was down 4 hours. So the week before that, half my block on my side, 2 days in a row, went down for an hour with no explanation. This is an answer no one could get. Now, I was down from July 3rd at 6:30 to July 6th around 3:30. So now I am not entitled to that $42. And this is ridiculous. I lost food. No one's going to replace my food. I understand people that are low income. I feel sorry for them, but also that's not fair to us normal people who maybe can afford a little bit, but that's money that I could spend somewhere else. And as far as these data centers, you guys need to stop this because this is going to hurt our environment. So as far as going after DTE, you guys need to put a stop to all these raises. My bill when I first moved here used to be $30. Right now I'm at $200. Every month it's just increasing, increasing, increasing. How are people supposed to live? I'm a senior. So I'm luckily I'm not sort of on a fixed income, but my husband will retire, we will be. And I feel sorry for people that are on fixed income and all this is happening. So I hope you're listening to all these viewers and people that are calling in because they've said a mouthful. And I just don't want to repeat everything. And I know my mayor of the city too of Dearborn was outraged about all this. And that 5 bottles of water DTE gave us and that battery pack thing was not even worth my time going. The way it sounded like we were going to get a case of water, which would have helped more than those 5 bottles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Up next, we have Kian.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kian. I am a 23-year-old male, and I am a longtime resident of Detroit. I was brought here today by Congresswoman Tlaib, who encouraged me to use my voice and share my experience, and I am here to do just that today. You know, as a Detroit resident, I am deeply concerned about DTE services. Just 2 weeks ago, my family lost power for 2.5 days, forcing us to throw all of our groceries away. Then yesterday, our power went out again for another day and a half. This has become an ongoing cycle, and it's simply not acceptable. I have to ask, how old is the equipment and infrastructure that DTE is relying on? If residents are paying some of the highest utility bills, we deserve a reliable electric grid. My DTE bill is over $500, and it's already difficult to afford. On top of that, I'm expected to replace hundreds of dollars worth of spoiled food because of repeated outages. This isn't just about me. It's about thousands of families, seniors, people who rely on medical equipment, and working families across our community who continue to bear the burden of these outages. We have to do better. As a district, we must come together, hold DTE accountable, and demand the reliable service that every resident deserves. Thank you for allowing me to share my concerns.
Thank you, Kian. Up next, we have Jay. And then Andrew Ace Linares.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, hi. My name is Miss James. I'm a resident of District 1. We lost power at the beginning of the month during the holiday weekend, and then we lost power again with the underground cable issue. And like the gentleman said before, I do remember back when Detroit Edison said we need to put all the wires and cords and things underground, and then we are not going to have power outages anymore. Wonder where those people are now. But here we are. DTE has told us to use less energy, and we've done that. My bill personally, I've used less, and it has gone up $400 over what it was before. And when I said something to them, they're like, oh, it's just, regular inflation. That's not regular. That is irregular. Not going up to 400 on top of what I was already paying. So now we're up to over $700 per month. That's not feasible for middle to low income people. It's not. We can't afford that. And then for me to have to sit outside trying to charge up devices in my car only to see a blanket of smoke come and not be warranted for anything because I don't have electricity. I don't get all the news stories, so I didn't even know that I'm outside and I'm at risk. So that's an issue. And then for DTE to say that they're using solar power and everything is going to be cheaper, it's not cheaper. It's more. It's costing us more. You're getting solar power for free. That's the sun. You're getting that for free, and then you're charging me for it. And I feel like it's not fair. It's beyond not fair. I think it's robbery. I feel like they're committing crimes that I can't even necessarily prove, but I feel like it's all just wrong. We never got any water. We didn't get any generators. We didn't get these swag bags that I keep hearing everybody talk about. We didn't get anything. We had to just power through it. We've lost food. I have 2 senior citizens that reside with me, and trying to get them through that with the heat, without electricity, and then having medicines and medical devices that need to be used was created a terrible hardship for us. And to offer $42, which is only enough really to put gas in your tank to even just to get to the store, it's really laughable. I am really, really disappointed in DTE. I really would like to see something change. Actually, I need to see a lot to change, including the reimbursement amount, the amounts that they're charging for services every month, where we're not even getting those services. Is It's a huge problem for us. I had some other things that I needed to say, but I think a lot of the things that I wanted to say, our previous callers have already said, and they've done so even more eloquently than I. But I appreciate you guys giving us this time to hear what it is that we've been going through. And I am done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. J. We've got 2 more folks, and we'll try and get to both of you. Andrew Ace Linares and then Winston Balmaceda.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. My name's Andrew Ace Linares. So I'm a service disabled veteran from the Dearborn Heights area, and I have a terminal child just this past April that was born that is on oxygen. And so these power outages that we've had have been, particularly devastating. So that's just to set the frame. But what I really want to say is that a couple of things obviously worth noting that, out of all the orders that have been queued up by this commission since 2010, 4,520 of them, not a single one has been voted down. Maybe one since 2015. So the track record is not great. But I really want to pay attention to the fact that this really isn't a $474 million ask, because they're also asking for funds to be approved for 28, 29, and 30. It's actually over $1 billion ask. So considering that we've just given them $1 billion in the past decade, I think that there's some serious problems here with this infrastructure that's not really capturing the efficiency of the grid. Patient going on, that a lot of it's just going to waste. And so I've spoken with people that have that been in the space for a long time, and everybody says the same thing. That for where we are in the country, we pay too high, we don't have enough service, and we're not getting what we pay for. And so that's what you guys are here for. You guys are here to hold them accountable. But you guys have this exemption from the Public Meetings Act that you're able to do everything behind closed doors, and without having to have any transparency to the public. I think that's a real problem. That's a real problem in a democracy, and that's a real problem when you have your commission that has the chair's litigation counsel with the public energy source that you're supposed to be regulating, and when you have so much cross counting of people going back and forth. When you have commissioners going to work for the energy company right after you get off the commission, then of course everybody's saying like, okay, well, what are you guys doing here? What is the point of having this commission if everything is voted for anyway and everything is kept secret, and they keep getting these rate increases, but everybody is still getting these power outages, and they've gotten much worse. I've been in this area, my whole life, besides for the time I was in the military, and it's never been this bad. So something's got to give. And what I would suggest, what I would recommend is that I would search your collective moral conscience and think about where this will go. Because eventually people will get tired of it. Eventually, they will do something about it. And if I'm the one that made the decision on that kind of thing, and people see the waste and the expenses that are going and hurting this community, I would not want to be the person who signed off on that. Thank you. I'll yield my time.
Thank you, sir. And Winston Balmaceda, we'll give you the last word today. Looks like Mr. Balmaceda has left. I want to thank all of you for the comments, both those in person and those virtual. There's obviously a lot of frustration that I think we knew when we walked in the door and have a better appreciation for as we prepare to walk out. And so I appreciate all of you for sharing the personal stories of how you dealt with it, the elected leaders who spoke, including the two mayors who are here, who shared what it meant to their communities, as well as those who called in. So at this point, we'll conclude the public comment period of the meeting. Please note that the public may continue to submit comments to the commissioners via email at lara-mpsc-commissioners@michigan.gov. Maybe just one announcement today from me before we leave, and that is to acknowledge that the legislature has finalized the budget that will start October 1st of next year. For the commission, I want to express my appreciation for the support both for damage prevention training programs, as well as the reestablishment of the Renewable Energy and Electrification Infrastructure Grant Program that Commissioner Paratek mentioned earlier, that has previously provided support for things like the Alpena Community College solar project and providing funds for our grant-making ability. So appreciate the legislature's support for those two programs in particular, and for the work of the commission more generally. Are there any other announcements from either of you? Okay, with that, we'll wrap. Our next commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 6th at 1:00 p.m. One other calendar note, the regular commission meeting scheduled for August 20th is being changed to Thursday, August 27, 2026. It'll still be at 1:00 p.m., just pushing it back a week. And the revised commission meeting schedule will be posted to the commission's website this afternoon. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn today's meeting.
I second the motion.
We will now have a vote on the motion to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.